One thing that I find very fascinating about Spider-Man is watching his evolution throughout the years. It has gotten to the point where it's damn near impossible to think of a time where Spider-Man was not the king of superheroes. There was actually a time in life where he was merely a comic book character, and the traditional NPCs didn't really acknowledge him. So we know it was definitely somewhat of a new thing and hell of a risk to try to adapt this goofy, cartoony, childish motherfucker on the big screen. But fortunately for us, out of this risk, a legend was born. And many people were there in the year of 2002 to witness the birth of this legend. To some, they were entertained. To others, their hearts were touched. But nevertheless, they all returned to their lives, completely unaware of what's to come. Just for those directors and writers to come out of nowhere and be like, "Two guns, bitch," and drop another one on our heads like tailor made. And I gotta say, Spider-Man 2 ruined everything. Because of you, Spider-Man 2, every Spider-Man gotta have a sequel. Actually, every superhero movie gotta have a number 2. Even for the movies that they know don't deserve it. So today, Spider-Man 2, as punishment for oversaturating the superhero genre, I'm going to put you to the test. Since everybody like making Spider-Man 2 so much, we're gonna see which one is the best. And we're gonna be starting this off with a tier list. Within these next few minutes, I'm gonna be putting each of the Spider-Man sequels in their respective tier lists. And at the end, we'll take whichever ones rank the top 3 and determine which one is king. Alright, let's get this cracking. I really don't know which one to start off with, so let me flip a coin. Spider-Man Edge of Time. Edge of Time is pretty much the sequel to Spider-Man Shattered Dimensions. So how exactly does Edge of Time, the follow-up, the number 2, hold up to Shattered Dimensions? While the story was more serious and more deeper than its predecessor, I feel like the gameplay took a step back. While they do add some interesting and neat mechanics, it just simply doesn't have the same catalog as the first one. The levels are nowhere near as unique and neither are the bosses. But the story is fire, one of the earlier ones to play around with the concept of a canon event. Overall, it's a playable game, but me personally, I would not edge to this. What? I believe this baby boy belongs in the B tier. Next up, we got Spider-Man II, the Sinister Six. Essentially, the plot of this game is that Doc Ock gathers up the Sinister Six so they can kidnap Peter Parker in order to bait out Spider-Man. They pull up to the Parker residence and only sees Aunt May, so they kidnap her instead. This, of course, forces Spider-Man to go into action. He goes to the Coney Island only to fight people in uniforms, clown suits, in bear costumes. Wait, what? These are not enemies, these are employees! Beating up random citizens trying to make an honest living? Not my Spider-Man. You can take your ass in the D tier. Spider-Man II Enter Electro. This is the sequel to the OG, the most classic Spider-Man game of all time. This is the one that started it all, setting the blueprint for all of the future Spider-Man games to come. So is the sequel of the game as iconic as the original? No, definitely a great sequel for its time, but by today's standards, it's really just DLC. The changes that they add here are definitely not major, but I still think this is a very solid sequel. These games are probably some of the best when it comes to capturing that comic book charm. The story may be a little more simple than the original, but it's still enjoyable fighting the villains that you didn't get to fight before. And Spider-Man is more witty this time around. I think I'm feeling a solid B tier on this one. The Amazing SpiderMan II Video Game Edition. I'm sorry, but this is going in the C tier. This shit sucks. When you play this game in modern times, it's just hard not to think of this as a bootleg version of Marvel Spider-Man. Especially when you consider that they both have the same story. Harry is sick and he's mad about it. But we all know which one does it better. It lacks the comic book charm that the old Spider-Man games have, and it lacks the graphical fidelity that the newer ones have. It's just there. And low-key, I like the first one better. Amazing Spider-Man II Movie Edition. The ultimate tragedy of the Spider-Man cinematic universe. While this sequel was definitely overhated on release, I feel like some of the critiques were definitely correct. Some of the plot points were definitely hidden, and it's a damn shame that we never got a follow-up. But at the same time, this movie has other subplots that are simply not as enjoyable. On one side, you got the fight scenes, and then you got Gwen Stacy, and it make you go like, But then on the other side, you got the Parker parents, and you got Green Goblin. It make you go like, ugh. Overall, the good and the bad about this movie pretty much evens out, so I shall declare this sequel as mid. Gonna have to put you in the C tier. Venom 2, Let There Be Carnage. I don't want to talk about this one. What about Spider-Man 2? Video game edition. You know how I said this Spider-Man game was the one that set the blueprint for all of the future ones to come? Well, somebody lied. This game was the first of its kind, setting the absolute standard of what it feels like to be Spider-Man in New York, with some of the mechanics still standing the test of time. Many Spider-Man games were made after this, but only a few were able to match this quality. And the most important thing about this game is that it had air combos. A tier. Spider-Man Far From Home. After rewatching all of the Spider-Man 2s, I have to admit, Far From Home is probably the worst one. As much as you could say about Amazing SpiderMan 2, you gotta respect it, because at least it was trying to do its own thing and actually tried to expand upon the themes of its prequel instead of just simply rehashing them. Far From Home just does the same thing that Homecoming did, but worse. A story about Spider-Man trying so hard to live up to the Avengers until he eventually realizes that he has to be his own man. This was actually good for Homecoming in my opinion, because it was his first time around. But after that, they just threw all of that character development out of the window. One of the worst scenes is when Peter got stuck in the middle of nowhere, then he got picked up on a jet by Happy. He started crying and shit. Then he got motivated and started doing some Iron Man shit. And then he just over here staring, smiling at him like, no, this is trash. It's really a shame because this is a well-made movie and an entertaining one at that. And it actually does a good job at what it's going for. Unfortunately, what it's going for is just not it. The only saving grace of this movie is if you look at it considering what happened in No Way Home. But other than that, it really pains me to do this. But I gotta put you in the D tier. Next up, we got good old Marvel's Spider-Man 2. Now with this one, I'm a little conflicted. I really don't know how exactly I feel about this game. There are times where I really enjoy this game, and then there's other times where I think it's mid. But despite all of that, we cannot deny that currently, Spider-Man 2 is the most definitive Spider-Man experience. Gameplay wise, this pretty much has what you need. It got fire swinging mechanics, fire combat, fire bosses, and most importantly, they got Venom. And you get to play as him in the most hyped gameplay segment of 2023. But at the same time, I can find myself looking at the story, and this might be a personal problem, but I really feel like they should have went in a slightly different direction. The main theme about Spider-Man 2 is balance. And if you try to take on too many responsibilities on your own, you will end up crumbling. So after they learn this valuable lesson, how exactly do they apply that to their lives? They let Miles be Spider-Man full time, even though he just said that he would try to spend time with his friends and family more. Even though I've talked about this before, it still sucks to this day. Insomnia really think they slick, trying so hard to replace Peter Parker, but I can see through all of the bullshit. Miles Morales is going to be the replacement, while Silk is going to be his sidekick. Spider-Man 3 is going to have a black male and an Asian female being superheroes together. Bro, they just making Assassin's Creed Shadows. This game is fake woke, fake deep.
He stinks and I don't like him.
And one more thing I don't like about this game. When you get to this one boss, it really S tier. Now it's time to talk about the big boys, the legends. Starting off with Venom, Let There Be... No. Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. We already know what's the deal with this movie. 10 out of 10, greatest movie of all time, greatest Spider-Man movie of all time, masterpiece, flaw. How the fuck did Miles Morales escape the Spider Society? How long was he Spider-Man at this point? Like 2 years? How in the multiverse did you let the entire army of Spider-Man get outmaneuvered and outplayed by Miles Morales? Every single Spider-Man here should be ashamed of themselves. They had the audacity to bring out the OGs, Spider-Man Spectacular, Spider-Man Unlimited, and their only purpose in this movie is to look inferior to this one kid. I find this scene extremely disrespectful to the Spider-Man legacy. My only wish for Beyond the Spider-Verse is that they stop with all of this Gary Sue woke shit, man. Please. And to make up for all this plot armor, Miles' daddy should die. S tier. Alright, last but not least, the one that started it all. SpiderMan II. S tier, I'm not even gonna waste your time. Greatest live action Spider-Man sequel out of the bunch. But that MJ scene at the end, oh my god, that shit is so ass. You know what would have made this a 10 out of 10 movie? If this scene right here transitioned into a nighttime swing scene and then the credits roll. But instead, they throw away all of the themes of sacrifice and acceptance by making him just get the girl in the end anyways. Alright, I believe that's all of them. Before we decide which Spider-Man sequel is the best, I would like to take this moment to hand out a couple of nominations and awards. The first category is Most Innovative Gameplay, and that award goes to Spider-Man II. The next category, Best Art Direction. Come on, bro. Come on, we already knew this. Then we have the award for being the most comic book accurate, and that award goes to Electro. And the award for Best Gameplay goes to, yeah, that was pretty obvious. The award for Best Narrative in the game goes to Spider-Man Edge of Time. And the award for Best Soundtrack goes to Spider-Man II. Ooh, that's a hot one. Some saying Across the Spider-Verse got robbed. Alright, we have our top 3. The only question left to answer is, which one is king? I can tell you right now, it's definitely not this one. Which means it's between these two. And the winner is